Welcome everyone to the Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Monday, October the 7th. Roll call, please.
Okay. Corey Coots.
Here.
Chad Kiger.
Here.
Bruce Polly.
Here.
Ron Edwards.
Here.
Lori Gross. Here.
Everybody here tonight. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from last month, or I guess it's August meeting? And I would entertain a motion if there's no problems or questions.
Make a motion to approve the August meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes are approved. We have about 4 items tonight. The first one is Hutchison Sign Company for Mendez property. The subject property is located 1524 West South Street, Lebanon. The property is zoned general business and comprised of 1.56 acres. Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Pauly. Good evening, board members. We'll start off with a variance request for you associated with signs for the new Leon Mexican restaurant that's going in the old Denny's restaurant location on South Street. If they'll pull up the screen for you, we'll reorient everybody what the signs are out there. So this is the existing highway-oriented pole sign that's at the old Denny's site here. A little bit of background here. In our old ordinance prior to February of this year, we had a provision in there for conditional use approvals for highway-oriented pole signs within 1,000 feet of the interstate interchange. In the new ordinance, we do not have a provision for signs such as this at interchanges. And so the intention there being we don't want new signs such as this out on the interstate. So that has rendered these existing signs as non-conforming signs. And so thus, at the time, Leon wanted to propose reusing these, and I'll show you their signs here in a second. By doing so, they needed to request a variance to allow them to reuse the existing signs because a non-conforming sign can be reused if they're just replacing the panels. But in this case, you can see the Denny's signs have a very Denny's-oriented shape to their signs, and so they wanted to replace the cabinets. By replacing the cabinet signs needs to be brought up to current standards, meaning this would have to be removed in its entirety. So we talked to them about the idea of reusing these and suggested that they apply for this variance. So this is the existing Denny's sign that you can see from the interstate. And then their other sign on South Street is this sign that you see here. Again, same thing I'll show you here in a second. They're essentially just replacing the cabinet at the top with something of very similar size. So then we have, here is the sign on South Street. Again, you can see similar size, similar height, just replacing the cabinet at the top with a sign for the Leon Mexican restaurant. They did verify that these sizes of these replacements are essentially the same as what they were before. It's just the shape is appropriate for the user. And then here is the highway-oriented pole sign that you see here. Again, very similar height, size. It's just, again, they replaced the cabinet, thus requiring this variance request. And so that is the nature of the request. The request is essentially a variance request from the sign standards to allow them to continue to use the existing pole sign structure and the existing pylon sign structure on South Street. What we did evaluate as we looked at this sign is while it's still taller than what's permitted, we did provide a condition on there when I get into it about upgrading the sign structure so that it becomes closer to meeting our monument sign standards in terms of the design or type of sign. And what that would be wrapping the poles, because monument signs have to have a solid base structure on them and not mounted on poles. So we've just suggested wrapping this with metal similar to the rest of the body of the sign here. So that is the nature of the request, is to allow them to be able to continue using the existing signs on the property in a similar fashion as they are currently. And they've requested this variance to allow that to happen. In terms of the 3 criteria for approving a development standards variance, the first is that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Staff has determined from relief from the sign type and height will not be injurious to the public health. The proposed signs will meet all applicable setbacks and are of similar type and size to the existing signs on the property. The second criteria is the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Staff has determined that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. The proposed signs essentially match the signs that exist currently on the property, albeit with a different shape for the sign cabinet, and are similar to pole signs for adjacent users such as White Castle, McDonald's, and the BP gas station. Number 3, the strict application of the terms of the UDO will result in practical difficulties. Staff has determined the strict application of the terms of the UDO will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. In this segment of South Street and Interstate 65, the adjacent retail users are at a significantly lower elevation. You can kind of see that here. South Street is just on the right-hand side of the picture here. This property is significantly lower than the elevation of the street, so allowing this height. So the ordinance would only allow 12-foot height for this sign if it were somebody were building it from scratch and new. And so this additional height allows for better visibility from South Street because it's so much lower than the street. The additional height and size of the signs provides the necessary visibility to motorists. Additionally, because adjacent retail users have pole signs, the subject property would be at a disadvantage and unique from the neighboring properties if not permitted to maintain the existing signage on the property. And with that staff recommendation, planning staff recommends approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the sign type and height size requirements of the UDO subject to the following condition. As I highlighted previously, number 1, that the applicant wrap the exposed base on the pylon sign along South Street with a similar black metal material as the remainder of the sign to cover the posts, bringing it in compliance with the definition of the monument sign type. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
There's nothing to wrap on the other sign though, correct?
No, yeah, with that height and that size pole, there really isn't anything you could wrap to make that more like a monument sign. You'd probably just be creating a sail in the wind if you tried to add too much to that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Does the applicant want to add anything? Okay, that being said, this is a public meeting, and if anybody in the audience cares to step forward and speak on this issue, come on up. Seeing nobody's stepping forward, we'll close the public end of the meeting and look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve docket 2431 as written.
Second.
Chad, I think.
Sorry, Lori.
Oh, that's fine.
Corey?
Yes.
Chad?
Yes.
Bruce Pauly?
Yes.
Ron Edwards?
Yes.
Lori Gross?
Yes.
Motion passed. Congratulations and good luck. Next item is docket 2432. And by the way, if anybody is going to speak, we'll need a name and address up here with Lori. Docket 2432 is Chicken Nugget and Gang located at 117 West Elm Street in Lebanon. The property is currently zoned neighborhood business within the thoroughfare overlay district and has approximately 0.19 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Pauly. This is a conditional use application to allow, by definition, a use that falls under the definition of animal sales and services, household pets only on the subject property. So this is for Chicken Nugget and Gang. What they would propose to do on this property is essentially animal adoptions and education. So it's not a significant amount of animals to be kept on the property. It'd be primarily used to complete adoption processes and provide education for proper care of animals. They will, however, have a small number of animals housed at the property, primarily reserved for small animals in small numbers, such as maybe a litter of kittens with the mom, rabbits, guinea pigs, etc. This Chicken Nugget and Gang does not take in adult dogs and cats, and so most of their adoptable animals will be housed. And most of their adoptable animals are not housed at this property. They have another facility outside the city where they do that. So this is primarily their headquarters, adoption processes, education. All they do have a few small animals there to provide for education to kids about how to take care of animals. It is a use that would have minimal daily traffic. There's one full-time employee and then a small number of volunteers that come and go to clean up and spend time with the animals. So there's not a significant amount of daily traffic, particularly during the week where customers would be appointment only. And then they would be open for a series of hours on Saturdays. So the only open hours where people would be coming and going is Saturdays. The rest of the week would be by appointment only. And they do recommend most people get appointments even on Saturdays, so it just wouldn't be a significant amount of traffic. So again, by definition, this falls under animal sales and services, household pets only, which is a conditional use in the neighborhood business zoning district. And as I mentioned, that is a conditional use application, and there are 5 evaluation criteria that we need to identify and review and determine a conditional use. The first is the use consistent with the vision, goals, and objectives of the comprehensive plan. Staff has determined that the comprehensive plan designates this area as residential. However, the current land use pattern and zoning designation allow a mix of residential and low-intensity commercial uses. The proposed use by the applicant would fit the description of a low-intensity commercial use. Number 2, it complies with the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance. There are no specific requiremms for this type of use, the animal sales and service household pets only uses. And so they do meet all applicable standards specific to that use. The third is the use compatible with the character of the general vicinity. Staff explains here that the Lebanon Street corridor and this area along Elm Street contains a mix of residential and commercial uses. Directly north of the property is the Hardee's restaurant. West is a real estate office, east is a vet clinic. So south of the property, uses begin to start transitioning to more residential uses, but certainly in the general vicinity of that facility itself, there are a number of commercial uses. Evaluation criteria number 4 is it can be adequately served by essential public facilities and services. Staff has identified that the proposed site is adequately served by all public facilities and services currently. Criteria number 5 does not create circumstances detrimental to people, property, or the general welfare by exposing or by producing excessive traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odor, or other conditions incompatible with the uses in the zoning district. And the proposed use by the applicant will not create any circumstances that would be detrimental to uses permitted in the zoning district. And finally, number 6 is it allows orderly development of the surrounding property for uses permitted, and the proposed animal sales and service use proposed by the applicant would not impede the development or use of surrounding properties for permitted uses. With that then, staff's recommendation and review of the requested conditional use for the allowance of an animal sales and service household pets only use within the neighborhood business zoning district. Lebanon Planning staff recommends approval subject to the following condition. And the reason we put this condition because the definition of this use has a pretty broad range of types of uses. It could be a pet store with a lot of pets, certainly a much more active site. So what we wanted to do is limit it here to this specific user and this specific use. So if anybody else wants to come in and do an animal sales and service use, it would have to be reevaluated and consider those things that might be impactful to the neighborhood. So the condition here is that the approval of the conditional use is limited to those specific animal sales and services uses proposed by the applicant. Any change in use or increase in the intensity of the use by the current or any subsequent owners will require approval by the City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This one doesn't have any outdoor storage area, correct, for animals?
There really isn't any room for it there. It's pretty much building and parking lot. If they want to bring up the screen, I can kind of give you an idea of the site. I guess I didn't pull that up. So this is highlighted in this area. It actually shares the property with the Hope Realty office, which is out on Lebanon Street. And so it's this small building that's back here at the back of the property adjacent to the alley. You can see the parking lot is all essentially directly around the building.
No other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Applicant want to come forward and add anything? Guess maybe we don't have an applicant here. Okay. The meeting is open to the public. Does somebody want to step forward?
So maybe before you do that, the rules of procedure suggest if the applicant is not present, that it should be continued unless the 5 members decide it's okay to consider it. So just wanted to kind of point that out. That's up to you guys. If you think this is something you want the applicant here, you might want to continue it. But if you're comfortable moving forward with it, you can all unanimously make the decision to go ahead and go forward with it. I have not heard. It's not the agenda.
Make a motion, we proceed. I agree.
You probably take the
Say aye.
official vote. Yeah, aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll proceed.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I opened the meeting to the public and nobody stepped forward. So I closed the meeting to the public and would now entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the requested conditional use and with the following condition, that the approval of conditional use is limited to those specific animal sales and service uses proposed by the applicant. Any change in use or increase in the intensity of the use by the current or any subsequent owners will require approval by the City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Corey Coons,
Yes.
Chad Kiger,
Yes.
Ron Edwards. Oh, Bruce Polly,
Yes.
Ron Edwards,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, next item is docket 2436, Boone County Rural Electric Membership Corporation. Property is located at 1207 Indianapolis Avenue in Lebanon. Property is zoned general business within the thoroughfare overlay district and comprised of 16 acres. Mr. Bontrager.
Thank you. This item before you here for the Boone REMC is a significant redevelopment of their site on Indianapolis Avenue. And it will take place, let me get my file here. It will take place in phases where they will begin to construct and then replace existing facilities with new facilities and do essentially to accommodate and plan for and prepare for future growth in Lebanon and Boone County. And so what you see here is the overall site plan, and I'll certainly let the applicant go through the story about what they're doing and how they're doing it, but this kind of gives you an idea. Had too many buttons going. So this is the overall that'll show you there's a series of facilities that be constructed. So you have their existing site that's kind of to the north here, and then to the south here is the old John Deere facility dealership here that the RMC also owns and has been using for some storage and other uses down there. So you can see here as a complete redevelopment, and this is actually new construction, a new administrative office and storage facility here, new parking areas for employees and for customers, and then a series of additional buildings, 1, 2, 3 over here on the south with some storage yard area in the middle of it. As part of their redevelopment, we evaluated this overall site with them to determine if there was going to be any variances that were necessary. One of them that we've identified is you can kind of, let me probably better if I. This is the southern portion of the site. We'll zoom in a little bit. Excuse me. On the south here, you will see they've got security fencing, which, as you can imagine, with the type of equipment, materials, et cetera, that RMC uses, there's a lot of value there, and they want to keep it secure. Go back up a little bit. And so they have a security fence that you can see wraps around the entire site. To the back here, it's going to be a vinyl wrap chain link fence. They do extend that security fencing out in front of the buildings, which is technically in the front yard. By ordinance, then you're limited to a height of 4 feet. As you can imagine, a 4-foot fence is not going to provide much security. So they'd like to continue the 6-foot tall fence all the way around the property into the front here. They have proposed changing the material to more of a decorative metal type fence. Out here, it would be most visible on Indianapolis Avenue, just to provide a better aesthetic to that fence. But they did want to come out here so that they would have security fence and a gate out closer to Indianapolis Avenue, such as you see here. Thus doing so, then they're requesting a variance to allow that additional height for the fence in the front yard. The other variance Let's pull this up here. This kind of gives you a bird's eye view of the redeveloped site. What you see here in the foreground is the administration office building. Then you've got the ops warehouse and rolling stock buildings to the back, and then you've got service and storage. This is actually facing southeast, so this is to the south side of the property. This property is in the thoroughfare overlay district, which has heightened architectural standards requiring 50% masonry on all facades of all buildings within the site, regardless of their proximity to Indianapolis Avenue. So that means that these buildings all the way to the east here that are closer to the old railroad right-of-way and not visible from Indianapolis Avenue still are required to meet that 50% masonry requirement. So what they have done here and what proposed here is to provide on elevations primarily here that you see that are most visible from Indianapolis Avenue to provide masonry such as that is required by the UDO, but then transition to more durable masonry block, metal panel materials as you get further to the back, farther away from Indianapolis Avenue. As you can see here, there is actually another facility, separate facility that's not related to RMC that's out front here on Indianapolis Avenue. So these buildings are actually primarily hidden back behind those other facilities. And so those you can see are very similar in terms of the masonry block and metal panels, what you see back here. So what they've done here is they've provided masonry on the most visible areas and are requesting a variance to allow these alternative materials and other parts of the property that are least visible from Indianapolis Avenue. So those are the two variances that are being requested tonight. And rather than actually in this case reading through all of the findings of fact for both of them, I will just indicate that those findings are contained in the staff report for the record. And let me find and staff in both cases has recommended approval of the development standards variance request, one to permit relief from the non-residential fence and wall standards of the UDO, and two to permit relief from the thoroughfare overlay district architectural standards of the Unified Development Ordinance. With that, I'll stop and answer any questions you might have about the overall site and the two variance requests, and then certainly the applicant is here to answer any specific questions about the project and redevelopment of the site.
And what's the hardship that they're claiming in seeking the variance from the architectural standards?
So they're looking at buildings back here that are primarily industrial uses. You know, they're going to have a lot of equipment, a lot of big equipment, and they're looking for very durable buildings and materials for those types of buildings. This is a building that would be permitted on our business park typically, but because they're where they're located on the Indianapolis Avenue corridor, it requires all sides. Again, like I said before, part of the hardship is parts of this property are a significant distance off of Indianapolis Avenue. And if it weren't for the parts of the property that were in the overlay district, the rest of the property wouldn't even be required to meet those standards because they're more than 400 feet away from the road. So really in this case, it's because you got a larger property, you got multiple buildings, you got some out to the front, which are visible, others to the back, which are less visible. So that's really the hardship there is you've got a unique property that's big and has parts of the property that are technically outside of the overlay district, but because the standard says that the whole property has to meet those standards. So we got 5 buildings on the property, some that you're really not going to see much of from Indianapolis Avenue, and that's where they're requesting the variance.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
For the outdoor storage, is that addressed or does that need to be addressed?
They actually have a previous approval to allow
Gotcha.
outdoor storage back there.
I appreciate the new setup with blocking it a little bit, so.
Yeah, yes, that
love
was
the way
certainly
that works.
intentional to try to use the buildings to block that. But they did, it's probably before you were on the BZA, got approval to allow outdoor storage when they acquired that property there to the south.
Does anybody from REMC want to step forward and address the board?
Only if you have questions you want to ask.
I think we're good to go. Okay, there was no further questions for them. Public meeting, would anybody care to step forward? We will close meeting and look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the 2 variance requests.
Yes.
Coons? Yes. Chad Kiger?
Yes.
Bruce Polly?
Yes.
Ron Edwards?
Yes.
Lori Gross?
Yes.
Approval granted. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
We have one more item tonight, docket 2437, Andrew Bowman and the Refuge Teen Challenge located at 227 East Superior Street, Lebanon. Property is currently zoned R6 and approximately 0.34 acres in size. Mr. Bontrager.
Thank you, Mr. Pauly. This is a request that has been before the board previously. Back in February 2018, there was a use variance request filed by Youth and Family Health Network to consider a women's recovery group home on the subject property. The reason it was a use variance at that time, and it's now a conditional use request this time, is in the new UDO, group residential homes have gone from being not permitted to being a conditional use. And that being, as we talked about a lot last time, group homes have to be considered like any other similar type of residential use, and cannot be essentially called out or singled out differently than those. So other uses like this, group homes are conditional uses. And with that then in the definition, then it also has a standard, and let me make sure I get the distance right because I don't remember it off the top of my head, that there's a minimum separation requirement. So group residential facility uses are required a minimum separation of 1,500 feet between group home locations. Staff is not aware of any other group home facilities within this vicinity, certainly not within 1,500 feet of the subject property. So this request does meet any standards associated with group residential facilities in the UDO. Just a little bit of history here again from the recovery home that was approved in February 2018. They were allowed to have 10 female residents and 1 full-time care provider. They were required to provide some parking behind the garage that's to the back of the property. At that time, staff and legal representation had cited the Fair Housing Act and Americans with Disabilities Act and how it addresses mental illnesses that are protected under those federal acts. And as such, local regulations of recovery homes, such as what's being proposed, is limited to general conditions that may be applied to other multifamily or group home type uses, such as adequate parking and things like that, and adequate facilities in the home. And so no decisions can be made for or against based solely on the type of individual that may reside in the residence, as this would be considered a discrimination by the Fair Housing Act. So what we did in evaluating this use on the site in 2018 was looked at, if you were to have 10 female residents here with 1 full-time staff member, what type of services need to be provided, adequate service need to be provided. It is a larger home. It's got 5 bedrooms, I believe. So if they're, and the residents, I'll let them talk a little bit about the operations, but the residents don't have their own vehicles. So it's not like there's going to be 10 cars parked out there. They don't get regular visitors. So again, the adequate on-street parking and parking behind the house is provided for the care providers. So those are the types of things we look for in determining that approval. And again, that was approved in February 2018. One of the conditions, actually, I'll say that there are a number of 3 conditions. One is that they be limited to the 10 residents and 1 full-time staff member, and that they provide those parking spaces to the rear. But the one, and the reason it's back before you here tonight, as the condition that the approval of the variance use does not run with the land and is limited to that applicant, which at the time was Youth and Family Health Network, and to the proposed use. Any change in the organization providing oversight to the facility or significant change in the operation would require review and approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals. In this case, there is not significant changes to the operation of the facility, but is it a change in the organization providing oversight? Thus the reason that we reevaluated the application. And in the new Unified Development Ordinance, group residential facilities are conditional uses on this site. So with that then, there are 6 criteria when evaluating conditional use applications. The first is that it is consistent with the vision, goals, and objectives of the comprehensive plan. In this case, the comprehensive plan designates this area for residential uses. The proposed group home use is residential in nature and meets the goals established in the comprehensive plan. Number two, it complies with the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance. As I mentioned previously, in addition to the definition of this type of group residential facility use, there is a minimum separation requirement of 1,500 feet between group home locations, and staff is not aware of any other known group homes within 1,500 feet of the subject property, so it does meet the requirements as established in the UDO. Criteria number three is that it's compatible with the character of the general vicinity. Staff has explained here that this block of Superior Street contains a mix of single-family, multifamily, owner-occupied, and renter-occupied housing, and the proposed group home fits within this mix of residential uses. The applicant intends to invest in the property, which will maintain the single-family character of the exterior of the home and provide adequate parking area to the rear of the property such that there would not be excessive vehicle parking on the street. Criteria number four is that the property can be adequately served by essential public facilities and services. Staff has determined that the proposed site is adequately served currently by all public facilities and services. Criteria number five does not create circumstances detrimental to people, property, or the general welfare by producing excessive traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odor, or other conditions incompatible with uses permitted. Staff has determined that the proposed group residential facility use will not create any circumstances that would be detrimental to uses permitted in the zoning district by producing excessive traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odor. And finally, evaluation criteria number six is that it allows for orderly development of the surrounding property for uses permitted. Staff has determined that the proposed group residential facility use will not impede the development or use of surrounding properties for permitted uses. With that then, you'll see that the conditions placed here are very similar to the conditions that were part of the approval in 2018. Staff has recommended approval of the conditional use to allow a group residential facility use within the R6 residential zoning district subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the approval of the conditional use does not run with the land and is limited to this applicant, a refuge teen challenge, and to the proposed use. Any change in the organization providing oversight to the facility or significant change in the operation would require review and approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Number two, that the group residential facility is limited to 10 residents on the site. Any increase in the number of residents would require review and approval by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And number three, that the applicant provide 3 paved parking spaces accessed by the alley adjacent to and to the south of the property. And that ends the staff report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here to provide some additional information about the operation of the facility for you.
When this was in 2018 and granted at that point, since that time, has TAC come up with any additional requirements or anything that they didn't have in 2018? Or do you know?
None that I'm aware of. I do know the fire department did do an inspection before they opened, and they did have some things that they had to provide on the inside to meet health safety requirements, and they did provide those. The applicant can go through, there's some repairs and upgrades that they're prepared to do to the home structure to make it better accommodate what they're looking to do, and I'll let them highlight those for you. But I do know that the fire department did have some requirements that they had them update some of the life safety requirements on the inside of the home at the time.
Have you had any complaints with the refuge to the north?
We have not had any complaints since the approval in 2018, none that were directly given to our department.
Sure. Would the applicant care to address the board?
Good evening, I'm Andy Bowman, and I serve as the State Director for Indiana Adult and Teen Challenge. And welcome to answer any questions or see how I can help.
What were some of the major changes that
So to the
city requested or?
Yeah, so the big changes for us are the inside of the house. We're an accredited ministry, and so we got to have it. Plumbing, some of the plumbing needs updated. The hot water heater downstairs was leaking some gas into it. Electrical has a lot of old knob and tube. flooring in general is kind of old, not sturdy, and so we're redoing the floor and the entire thing. Some of it's just simple stuff like painting the whole place. That's not a big change. But yeah, just making the entire inside house updated, safe from a wiring standpoint, changing some panels because some are like hot to the touch, and just getting it to a place where we feel like we have a really safe house for our women to come in and they feel like they got a nice place to come. They want to come home, they want to live in and get clean and sober and be successful, and a really nice place to do that in. So that's some of it. The garage outside, we're making an office space to have offices. So like the electrical's way up here. And so we just wanted to move some of those down and some of the stuff that's not huge structural stuff, but just it will be adequately used the right way. And that panel being updated too, because it's way out of date. So I don't know if that answers all your questions. Came in, cleaned the outside. The outside front porch has some wood that's real old and rotted out, fixing that. There was some bricks that were holding up like a, what's that called? You know what I'm talking about? The outside bar thing that we took down? I forget, post or pole that you would hold to walk up steps, made that safer. So just making things safer and not eyesores, as well as safety concerns that would be there, just getting it all up to date and fixed. The siding and the roof on it was already pretty much brand new in the window, so that was nice. So at least the outside looks really good and the big things and not having leaks and stuff, so.
Assuming the building's not currently occupied.
It hasn't been. So initially we came in, Live for Life is the one who's been using it with women. And we came in, we're just going to do a lease to own and kind of come up under their current zoning and everything, because we met the same requirements. But once we saw the scope of $60,000 to $100,000 that we were going to be putting into it to really get it up to code and where we wanted it, we said, let's buy it. And so that's why we're here in front of you today, is because we're like, we need to buy it with the amount of money we're putting into this. So let's get the variance under our name, even though we're doing the exact same thing that they were previously doing, just a different organization, obviously.
What about secure doors? How they come and when they go? Are they allowed to come and go as they please, or is there curfew or?
Yeah, so there is an alarm that's on the house, and all the doors will be secure. But the way our program works is 12 to 15 months they live in our program, always staffed 24/7 that will be with them. They can never come and go when they want. Obviously, staff can that have graduated and stuff, but the students, that's the big shift from the previous ones that were in there to us. Is while they're in our program, they are a student that doesn't have a vehicle, doesn't work a job. The jobs they work are always monitored by staff, and we're taking them to jobs and doing work duties with us, if that
Are they
makes
also
sense.
attending school?
So they aren't, it's 18 and above. So it is an adult women's program. If they needed to get their GED, we would help them with that. So they are attending school, but not like the school you might think of. They're attending school all day in that house. So the big dining room, or I don't know what you call it, maybe a family room, we'll be making that a classroom. And so that will be their classroom where they're doing Teen Challenge curriculum Monday through Friday in that house. So yeah, they are doing school, but it's Teen Challenge curriculum, going through recovery stuff and faith-based curriculum that we have. Yep. Yep.
Okay, once again, we'll open it for public comment. If anybody cares to step forward. You can give it here. Well, at some point you need to sign, yes, but
I took the pen though, so we'll do after.
My name's Robert Lewis. I live over here on 218 East Superior Street, right across the street. And I guess my questions would be, one would be, what would be the ages of these? Is it co-ed or is it?
No, just all adult.
go ahead and ask your questions and then he can.
Then he can
Answer.
answer, because he'll have.
Okay, and then I guess, would this be a court mandated place for them to go and they have other crimes on the books that,
So could they be?
Now, wait a minute.
Let him answer all his questions.
and, okay, and do you live in the area? Are you from here? Or are you from somewhere else? And where would the people be coming from? Are they from here or are they from somewhere else? And I guess that would be the extent of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the public end of the hearing at this point. And now it's up to you again now.
So I'll answer that first one, even though I did over there, but just so it's here on the record and for the mic. But he had asked, how old are the women? And so the women are 18 and above. So it's an adult program only, and there is no cutoff for age. So we've had women 65, 66, 67, 60. There's no cutoff when it goes up, but there is a cutoff. They have to be an adult. Second question, are they court mandated? Sometimes, sometimes they are, if the courts mandate them, or they can be, not all, not even most, to put a percentage on it, it fluctuates. Sometimes we might have one, other times we might have four. They're trying to get their life in order. So not always, but yeah, they can be court mandated to us. And do I live here? I think that's what you were asking. And so my sister Missy's over there, and she runs our adolescent girl center here in town. And so, yes, I live right on West Washington, so within walking distance of the house. One of the main reasons we wanted to have our center here rather than where it was 45 minutes away, because I live here, our CEO lives right down Washington. We have our other staff housing right out here by Pleasant View Church, that we have 3 staff that live. So we have about 5 or 6 of our staff that do live right here in the area, and that helps us to be able to bring a lot of really good leadership and oversight. And so that's what I'm excited about. And Missy lives right here in Lebanon as well. Where do the girls come from? Well, all over, basically the majority tend to be within 45 minutes to an hour of the area in Annapolis, but all over the place. They could come from California, they could come from Florida, they could come from Lebanon. And so it's basically anybody that hears about what we're doing and who we are, and there's an adult woman that needs help and is desperate and down and out, and they want to get clean and sober. The main thing with coming into our program, in order to come in, they have to say, 1, they want help, and 2, they have to be willing to commit to long-term help, as well as they have to continue to be broken and teachable and listen to authority, and there is discipline and things. But if they're disrespectful or kind of unwilling to cooperate with what we're asking, we would also then have them leave the program as well, and so they can get kicked out. But yeah, they could come from just about anywhere. I hope that answers that. I don't know if you guys want any clarity on anything else. Okay.
Happy with your answers.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for him? Ben, one question. Did anybody else react to the letter you sent out to the?
No, we had one individual that called that just didn't want to go pick up the certified mail notice. They weren't sure what it was about and called just to find out what it was about. But it wasn't specific to the actual application. So no, that was the only contact we've had prior to the meeting.
No further questions. Look for a motion.
I move to approve docket 24-37 and include the 3 conditions included in the staff recommendation.
Second.
Just for
Oh,
Just for clarification, Ben, these three conditions have to be met before the variance is granted, correct?
Correct. And I don't think there's anything they haven't already met. There was already spaces back behind the garage for parking, so I think they're probably already in good shape, but we just want to get them on record.
Got it.
Corey Coons,
Yes.
Chad Kiger,
Yes.
Bruce Polly,
Yes.
Ron Edwards,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck. Okay, before we close, our next board meeting is scheduled for Monday, November the 4th, 7 PM in this room. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.